Okay, I see attendees coming into our Zoom meeting here today. So welcome everyone. My name is Alan Rising. I'm the current CASH chair, and my day job, I'm the business services administrator for Long Beach Unified School District. So welcome. I see folks are still coming into our meeting room. So thank you for being here today to attend our statewide school facilities monthly meeting. So it's going to be a really good opportunity to hear from our state partners on the work that's happening up in Sacramento and issues that are affecting the operations of our schools. And so it's a great opportunity to hear from you. Just want a quick little reminder for attendees is that attendees are muted, but we absolutely want to hear from you. If you have questions throughout this presentation, please include those in the chat. We'll be monitoring those throughout presentations as each of our guests talk about their respective areas. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to answer your questions. So please include those in the chat, and we'll address each of those as we go through the presentation. Also, we like to recognize first-time attendees to our general meeting. So please, if you're a first-time attendee, go ahead and drop your name into the chat, and we can recognize that you're there with us today. So as we go through that, we'll be following along in our presentation as we move forward. It's a good time. There's a lot of activity happening as we're starting 2024. Lastly, there'll be a short survey that'll be provided to each of our attendees, and we do want to hear from you. We'd love for you to fill out those surveys. Let us know what you're thinking and how we did today, and also let us know if you have any future topics that we may want to address in this meeting or in future meetings, future opportunities. So thank you for that. So we'll jump into the next slide. So we want to remind everybody there's still opportunities, but tomorrow, just tomorrow, we'll have the next round of our web shops. This one is specifically looking at the governor's budget and the status of federal funding that affects schools. So there's still opportunity for you to go ahead and register on our CASH website for tomorrow. So this will be a great opportunity. As you may know, the governor released his proposed budget on January the 10th. And a lot of our lobbyists and folks in CASH have been poring over those documents and are ready to talk to you and give you some insight into what's contained in that budget proposal, which will be the basis of what we'll be working on over the next several months to ultimately end up in a final adopted budget by the legislature. So plan on being there. It'll be a great opportunity to understand the status of the state and also the status of funding that impacts directly with our schools. So plan on being there tomorrow, 10 a.m. Next slide, please. We also have a network mixer. So CASH routinely sponsors network mixers. This is an opportunity for all of us to get together, both public and private side, to talk a little bit about what's happening in our industry. We can connect, network, enjoy each other's company and conversations. This will be at Hive and Honey Rooftop Bar in Irvine. So there's the address for you. There's no need to RSVP. Just kind of show up with a great attitude and having an opportunity to engage with other professionals in our industry to talk about things that are happening in our industry. So looking forward to seeing you there. Next slide. So now we're going to jump right into our topics. And so we have with us today, we have Ida Clare, our state architect, has been able to join us today. So welcome, Ida. Nice to see you.
Alan, how are you?
Absolutely. Things are going well. So I hope they're going well for you as we start 2024. But I'll turn it over to you and let you give us an update on what's happening in DSA.
Great. Thank you. Okay. All right. Sharing my screen. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to share about what's going on at DSA. Everyone must have heard the news by now. We have a new San Diego regional office manager with Ron LaPlante. He began his work in January of this year. Craig is there assisting him in the transition. Craig will officially retire as of March 1st. So big change in the San Diego office, but it's working smoothly. And I'm pretty sure many of you know Ron, and that San Diego office is in his very capable hands. A little bit about the work at DSA right now. Since January, we've received 1,797 projects. Sorry, not January, July 1st. Sorry, this is fiscal year. 1,797 projects for a total of 5.37 billion. We know that costs are escalating, but this still, I believe, indicates that our workload is on par with what we've been typically seeing as of late. For the work on our desks, we have about $1.1 billion received in December, which is the work that we're working on right now. Our busiest office is Oakland with 74 projects and San Diego with 37.6% of cost of projects submitted. Submittals anticipated in January right now total 585 million and 700 and almost 2 million, 702 million anticipated in February. So DSA is busy. We did a 6-month back check or a 6-month look back on our back check to see how it was going in November and December. Our statistics show that we have about 50% of the projects achieving phase 1 back check, and that is projects of varying size. Obviously, our really, really large ones may not, but most of our projects that are medium to small size do get through in phase 1, which is good. That means that the design professional doesn't have to attend in person. So right now we see that it's going well. Of course, project specific, there may be some issues and concerns that you may have. And if you do, I encourage you to reach out to supervisor, regional manager, or myself. We'd like to keep checking in on this process to see how it's working. A little bit about last year's legislation. This is now in effect at Senate Bill 515 Stern, shade structures, amended Ed Code section 17671, and it applies to freestanding open-sided DSA-approved shade structures, which limits path of travel improvements to 20% of adjusted construction cost. So if you have any questions regarding the implementation of the shade structure projects, we encourage you to meet with DSA so that we can ensure that for your projects, the law is applied accordingly. I'm going to go real quick through the intervening code cycle. These are repetitive from my previous announcements, but they will be in effect July 1st. I just wanted to let you know that they have been published, and architects and design professionals are getting their supplemental pages for their code books. These supplemental pages are available for download as well on the Building Standards Commission website. Again, when it comes to access, significant improvements are the requirements for urinal compartments and all gender multi-user restrooms. And then, of course, nothing significant change in structural safety, just clarifying edits. Plumbing code was amended to permit all gender multi-user restroom facilities instead of being in conflict with the code as it was before. That's coming July 1. Cal Green requirements, EV charging power alternative, as opposed to the prescriptive requirements that are already specified in the Cal Green, and then also a requirement for existing facilities when a major electrical project is happening to the parking areas. And then, of course, the installation of CO2 monitoring in existing classrooms when a building is modernized. And our approved carbon reduction regulations, which apply to buildings, school buildings, 50,000 square feet and greater. I will let you know that there will be a guide coming out on how to comply with this requirement that we've partnered with on the Building Standards Commission. That's going to be out by the end of the month. And we're working with all our partners, including industry professionals, AIA, CEOC, on training that will be on the DSA website to target the approved carbon reduction mandatory measures and get all our clients and design professionals up to speed. Most of the design professionals who design buildings 50,000 square feet and greater are already familiar with these requirements, which is why the initial threshold was set at that threshold. We are in the middle of the 2024 triennial code adoption cycle. We are in our state agency workshops. There will be some public meetings coming up for Cal Green and Access. So if you want to know about those, make sure that you subscribe to our listserv. I don't have the dates of those specifically yet. I will let you know that there isn't a whole significant change in Cal Green. We kind of want to let everything that we did last code cycle simmer. So a lot of this may be just clarifying requirements if we need to. I know that there's one clarifying requirement on a technical requirement in the CO2 monitor we're going to adjust, which is the retention of data. Access is really just clarifying requirements. So nothing too significant coming for the 2024 triennial code cycle. Dealing with structural safety, I know that there's changes to the project inspector program. Most of that is just where it's going to be located in the code and clarifying the requirements to be eligible, become certified, and then also expanding on disciplinary action if we need to. So it's not a fundamental change to the program itself. It's just a fundamental change in the code of where it's going to be the regulations will be located. Let's see. We do have some updates. IRA 22, the cost thresholds have been increased per the annual increase that we do in January. And so structural safety, fire life safety, and access compliance, reconstruction or alteration projects that are not in excess of $128,342 are exempt from DSA review. And then, of course, the next level is structural safety and fire life safety, reconstruction, alteration projects with specific conditions may be exempt if they fall in between $128,342 and $288,769. We encourage you to look at IRA 22 for what those conditions are that allow them to be exempt. Accessibility upgrades. We have published our Access Compliance Advisory Manual, which has been updated for the 2022 California Building Code. There are new advisories in this manual. And that's a free download available on our website. Valuation threshold has been updated to $200,399, which, sorry for my notices, which is the first time it's gone over 200,000. So that's pretty amazing. I think when I started DSA, I remember it going over 100,000 about 10 years ago. So we are at 200,000 as the valuation threshold. What that means is projects below that threshold, alteration projects below that threshold apply 20% of path of travel improvements. Alteration projects above that threshold apply full compliance of the path of travel, with some exceptions. So of course, project specific requirements may meet some of those exceptions. Okay, we do have new accessibility training on the DSA Academy, one on circulation paths, one at housing at a place of education, and then coming soon, we're going to have CAS reports according to CRASCA that should be in place by February. We are trying to expand our accessibility training on our DSA Academy, and these courses do offer continuing education credit for design professionals. A little bit about sustainability, education, and outreach. Today, we will be releasing January Sustainable Schools Showcase, and so look for that announcement to be coming out soon. It's going to be discussing the use of shipping containers as school buildings. We are trying to create greater support for you in our sustainability plan review. Again, this is not a thorough review to the code, but it is providing additional support to you. And so we want to engage with you further, understand further challenges in implementation so that we can write regulations that are effective. And then understand any training resources that need to be developed. But we also want to provide to you greater support so that you can ensure that you meet compliance. There is a new DSA 403C checklist that's supposed to be submitted with each project that has the Cal Green requirements where you indicate, yes, it's in here. So it's intended to be used as a guide so that you can ensure that they're in there. Again, we don't provide full review. That's still self-certification. We do check for items that may be missing. If you do need to trigger requirements for shade trees or requirements for electric vehicle charging, and they're not in your documents and they should be, we won't be holding a plan review, but we will require that that information be provided before the project's closed out. And then again, just to mention at DSA Academy, there's training for sustainability. There's training for accessibility, and soon we'll have our Cal Green embodied carbon regulations. And with that, that's what I have for today. So questions?
Great, thank you, Ida. There's been a couple of questions in here about, and maybe we could quickly do a Reader's Digest version of the process for approval of what's called a pre-approved shade structure. And as we know, that just means the structure itself is approved.
Yes, it has to be on our list of pre-approved shade structures in order to be eligible for the 20%
yes.
limitation.
Yeah, and but then for some of the folks out there to understand, then the actual placement on the site would need to be reviewed to ensure fire access, those type of things, as well as liquefaction and other types of geological concerns that may be at the site. And then
so yes, it does go through full site review as it would normally. Yes.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, there would need to be an ADA review to ensure that we have an appropriate path of travel to the structure and to the other site amenities.
Correct. So it will go through, the site will go through fire life safety, structural safety and access review. If you're placing the structure out in a grassy field that's remote from any improved surface, right, then the connection is not a path of travel improvement. The connection is new construction. Anything that is there and existing, a walkway that's existing that it connects to, that's the point when path of travel improvements apply, because path of travel are improvements to existing areas that are already built. So that's a good way to understand the difference. Obviously, for the shade structures, we're going to want to make sure that students have equal access to them. And so that will be the first requirement in meeting the 20%. If you're locating it somewhere where there's an improved area, the 20% can be applied to that improved area to ensure that it's accessible. But if it's remote and there's no improved area that's occurred, that's actually part of the project and is not a path of travel improvement. So that's a good way to look at what we mean by a path of travel improvement.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So an accessible route's always required to be provided when you're creating that new. It's required to be accessible. Improvements are it's there and you need to improve it to make it accessible.
Yeah, beyond the base scope of the project.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. The other question is, you'd mentioned an approved list of shade structures. Is that resource available to individuals?
Yes, it's on our website. I can probably get that link for you, Alan, but we do have a pre-approved list. I think if you go on our website and say pre-approved list, I'm going to check real quick if I can. Resources.
Okay, great. But
yeah,
it is available.
I think it is on our website. I'm just trying to remember where it is right now, but I can get that to you.
Yeah. And go ahead, Tom.
So Ida, we have talked in the past about some of the challenges of districts that have been putting in solar in carport areas, or they may be indeed on something that could be a shade structure on a school site. Would this apply to those kinds of facilities that included solar production or not?
So first of all, it has to be on our list. So if there is a solar shade structure that creates shade, and I have to clarify that because the concept here is DSA pre-approved shade structures. That's what we would look at. And because the activity underneath it is being used by students, it must be accessible. I hope that answered your question. So in other words, it doesn't matter. The shade structure has to be on the list. I need to look at the list to see if there are DSA pre-approved shade structures that also provide solar.
and that distinction may be, that may be critical. But I was asking the question because, and you and I have had this conversation probably a couple times over the last couple of years, where a solar production facility that happens to be placed on an area where cars would park. And the question of shade has come up about in short, are you providing shade for every stall? And do those include access compliance stalls? And this was if you remember about 2 years ago, this was a challenge for a particular district. That's why I'm asking the question. So we can talk further about this, but
Yes.
you gave me a thought.
Yeah, no, those are site specific. Those don't really address path of travel. That's an equal access amenity. And really what we look for there is how many of the stalls have shade. So you can't shade all the parking stalls except the access compliant stalls. And so a lot of that is a subjective determination based on project by project in determining how many, how much is being provided. Because there is a subjective requirement, right? Under federal law, there's a requirement for when you address parking on basis of amenity that is interpretive, but that has been expressed to us that it may be an indication of shade being an amenity. So it all depends on the project specific, what's happening with the project specifically. So we prefer to deal with those issues project by project and engaging in those discussions.
Well, it's a unique concept that I don't think we've really approached before, at least not until about 2 years ago. The idea of shade and having some equitable access to shade, not simply being access compliant. But again, we can talk further about
Absolutely. This. Let's talk more.
Curiosity.
Yeah. And it always helps, Tom, as well, that if we can pull some sample projects where that occurred and we can work with you on that to determine what they are, then we can, when we have something specific to address in that manner, it kind of becomes a little clearer. And then, let's see if there's something that we can address as guidance as well. So in the sense of if we need to address additional guidance to clients.
We will. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you, Ida. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the great update. So there's obviously a lot of questions, a lot of things going on about shade structures and pre-approved shade structures, as a lot of folks, I believe, are probably navigating through spending a lot of those funds that we're all working on. So thank you for your time, and we'll move on. So we'll move on, and I saw Brian Lepask pop up. So Brian, good morning, welcome, and looking forward to a good update for OPSC.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Got a really exciting update. We have a new executive officer, Rebecca Kirk. She's coming back to OPSC. We're all pretty excited about it. She the last time she was with us, it was I think it was about 10 years ago. Time these days goes by really fast, but I think it was about 10 years ago. And she was our communications supervisor at the time. Since then, she went on to have roles at DSA. She was at the Department of Finance, I think, for about 4 years. And then more recently, she was at the Gambling Control Commission. But she'll be coming back home to OPSC as our executive officer. I've known Rebecca for a really long time. You can't find a nicer or more engaged person. She's extremely sharp. She's going to be a really great addition to our current team. And like I said, we're all really excited to have her back. I think she's starting on, I think it's next week, right at the end of the month, the beginning of February. And so please join me in welcoming her back. I think you'll all be very impressed. And we're really looking forward to getting Rebecca back to our team and back to OPSC where she belongs. So we're all looking forward to that. As far as tonight's meeting, the main item I wanted to cover is the construction cost index adjustment. And because it's an even year, we also are doing the assessment for development adjustment. We received our annual Class B construction cost index information from RS Means. The index, that's the one that we use, the RS Means index, has been in place as a permanent index that we use every year. That was adopted by the board in 2016. The current year is a decrease. It's a 1.33% decrease. When we got the numbers, we take the spreadsheet that they provide us. It's based off of 12 California cities. I think there's 50 or 60 different materials that they look at, and we apply it to our grants. So we're taking that for board approval tonight. I wanted to specifically thank Jared Anderson from School Facility Consultants. SFC every year helps us out by verifying the numbers, and we like to go over them with someone that's outside of our office just to verify that the calculations all match up. There's a lot of numbers when we go through and update that, so the more eyes we have on it, the better. So I really want to thank School Facility Consultants and Jared for that. You'll find the grant charts in the item itself, and we're also busy programming our database right now to reflect the new items, or the new numbers. We don't take funding items to January typically so that we can make our adjustment and we don't have to go back and adjust them for the new amounts in February. So you won't see too many or any new approvals this month, but we'll take those all to the February meeting with the new amounts. And again, we just do that so we don't have to take them for a second time. And then, as I mentioned, we also have, because every other year we do an adjustment to the assessment for development for developer fees. It's a 2-year calculation. Because of that, there's actually an increase, even though there was a decrease this year in the index. There's an overall increase of 7.84% for the 2-year period covering the last 2 years, 2022 and 2023. It results in new per square foot amounts of $5.17 for residential and 84 cents for commercial, and that's per square foot. Again, that's in our item in the agenda tonight, and if you want to take a look at that and all the details, that's where you can find it. That's really all I had to cover this month. The meeting's taking place like it normally does via webinar. If you want to go in person, it's going to be held at the East End Complex, which is at 1500 Capitol Mall. It's going to be in the auditorium, and that begins at 4 p.m. this evening. So yeah, with that, if anybody has any questions, I'm available to answer them.
Yeah, really quick, Brian, could you repeat that? The recommendation from staff to the board is a reduction of, I think, 1.33%. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's what the RS Beans index came in at. And so we literally just take that number and apply it to our grants every year, whatever the number is. Yeah.
Got it. Because scrolling through, I guess there was a question that came up. It says, has OPSC revised the construction cost valuation for school construction for 2023? And I think the answer was yes. That was a pretty sizable increase last year.
The valuation, I'm sorry, I'm not following your question.
Yeah, so I believe last year we changed the construction cost index by, I believe it was.
I think last year it was about 9%.
Yeah,
it was a 9% increase last year. The prior years, I think it's something like, and my math is probably off by a little bit, but it's around 25% over the last 3 years, if I remember correctly. There's been some pretty sharp increases the last 3 years. And this year there is a slight decrease, 1.3%. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, we adjusted every January.
Got it. Thank you. So there's a question, and I'll kind of paraphrase the question here. Remind the attendees of how that 1.33% reduction is going to be applied to which projects, to projects on the unfunded list, to projects on the backlog, and which projects would be subject to that 1.33% reduction.
So any projects that are approved by the SAB in the 2024 calendar year will get the grants that are in effect. So whenever we do an adjustment every January, it's in effect for that calendar year. So from January 1st to December 31st, anything that goes to the SAB for approval during that time frame will get I guess you could say, the most current index amount. And then we'll do another adjustment January of next year to see what will apply for 2025.
So if my project was approved and put onto the unfunded list, the true unfunded list, lack of AB 55 loans unfunded list, I would be under whatever rate was at that time.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, got it. I want to make sure I'm restating the question. I think that's where the question was focusing on. So let's see. I don't see any other questions in. So thank you, Brian. I appreciate your time, and yeah, we look forward to really kind of a new era. You know, we look forward to working with Ms. Kirk and building those relationships, or renewing those relationships as we go forward, and continuing our great partnership with OPSC. So thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. So I think we're going to move on to our regulatory and legislative updates, and we're going to call up Ian Padilla, one of our cash advocates, to talk a little bit about what's happening on the regulatory legislative update, or world. So Ian, take it away.
Thank you very much, Alan. And yes, just quickly, congratulations to Rebecca Kirk. Very much looking forward to working with her and the rest of the folks at OPSC. So yes, and thank you to my colleagues. I typically bat cleanup on our presentations, but I have an appointment I can't miss coming up, so I appreciate their flexibility. So just quickly, you're going to hear, of course, from my colleagues more about the state budget as it relates to school facilities and maintenance and a lot of the issues that we follow. But of course, as you know, one of the issues I follow are the state's climate change proposals and bills and all those pieces. And a quick summary in this budget is there was no, that I can tell, new programs under climate change or air or water or any of these types of natural resource issues that we're following so closely. So in some ways, of course, we know why that is, because there's a large budget deficit, which you'll hear more about, although there's some dispute about the size. So in some ways that's good news, I guess. In some ways a pause. But my little joke is that the legislature has not received the message about this yet. So right now, of course, the legislature is introducing bills, and they have a couple more weeks until February 16th. And so we're, of course, seeing bills that come through, and we're also aware of bills because we're talking to folks who are going to introduce them, and with other stakeholders. So quickly, I'm going to give you kind of not a blow by blow of each bill, but again, some of the categories that we're looking at again. And I think a good summary is a lot of them are very much the same as we've been talking about. So extreme heat mitigation in green schoolyards, you've heard a lot about that. You will probably hear more about that. SB 499 was the bill from last year that that did make it to the governor, but it was not signed. There will be another bill sponsored by, we believe, the Green Schoolyards America, a follow-up bill. So we don't know the details, the specifics yet, but of course, as anticipated, more focus on this issue. Also, the concept of using a green school index. There very well may be introduced or legislation introduced around that issue. So we'll talk more about that. Drinking water quality, of course, it's been a very important issue for the last 2 years with SB 1144, and then last year AB 249. New legislation has been introduced this year, AB 1851 by Mr. Holden, the same author that introduced the bill last year. So we're still taking a look at that. It is a pilot program, so we think that's better, but there's a lot of details to look at, and of course, including what kind of funding is associated with this. So we'll do definitely a focus on this bill. Air quality continues to be a significant area of legislative energy, I would say, specifically. We haven't seen the bills yet, but there will be at least 2 bills related to the CalShape program, likely extending the program and talking about and expanding, hopefully, allowable uses. If you're aware of the program, that's one of the primary issues, is qualifying for it, but also the restrictions surrounding the allowable uses. So we think that's good. We want to see, of course, the details. The question of funding still looms out there, because a lot of times these things happen, but there's no more funding. So we don't just only want to rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic. So we'll be looking at that as well. Last 2 bills or bill ideas is one regarding pesticides, particularly, there's restrictions with regard to the agricultural commissioner, and applications of pesticides within 1/4 mile of a school. There's a bill, AB 1864, that is proposing some notifications required by the agricultural commissioner and so on. So we know this is an important issue, an important side issue. So we'll be delving more and likely engaging on this bill. The last one that we know about is the idea of a master plan for green or sustainable schools. We do think with all these different, somewhat uncoordinated and unfunded proposals coming down, that some kind of a way to look at the impact, coordination, and the need for funding would be a good thing. And so Senator Gonzalez, who sponsored SB 394 last year, a bill similar to this, is going to sponsor another bill in this area. So we'll take a look at that. That, as far as we know, is sponsored by or Undaunted K-12, who's very active, is working with the author on that one. So we will obviously engage on that. Two quick ones in regulations, then I'll wrap up. Kind of flagging that for you is the State Water Resources Control Board has proposed a draft MS4 municipal permit, and it includes K-12 schools. So Cash has an official letter commenting on the preliminary draft permit, and we'll get that out more widely to Cash members. So you know where we are. Just a quick summary. Basically, we think it's unenforceable, and we say that and make the points why we think that's the case, in addition to the cost impact. So that's an important issue this year, as well as the CEC. We've talked to in some of their policy making. We've heard a lot about solar requirements for solar and battery storage. One I'm focused on a lot is the requirement in the code now enforced by CEC for all electric HVAC heat pumps. We've actually submitted a letter thinking that, or suggesting that a hybrid approach, one that can also use natural gas for some places where all electric is more difficult, should be an option. So those types of things. And the state architect also mentioned the requirement for CO2 monitors for modernization projects. So a lot in this same area. There will be more tomorrow. I'll get into these more as part of the budget and state bond workshop, and also, of course, at the Cash conference, the Cash Legislative Advisory Committee, and also the Cash Maintenance Network programming, which will include Teresa Pestaccini from UC Davis, who's going to be our keynote speaker at the breakfast, as well as folks from CEC in the CalShape program that are going to tell us a little more at the technical level. So with that, I'll wrap up and turn it over to my colleagues, but thank you, and thank you for letting me go first, and I hope to see you at the conference.
Thank you very much, Ian. I will pick it up from there. So let me back up a little bit and provide a little bit of context. The legislature just came back at the beginning of the month to start the second year of its two-year session. Right off the bat, they held some early hearings on bills that were left over from last year. They had some early deadlines to meet, but most of the bill work is yet to come. The bill introduction deadline for the second year is in mid-February, so those committee hearings will start to ramp up in late March. And on the budget side, which is a parallel track to the legislative calendar, the governor on January 10th presented his $291.5 billion state budget, and that's a $208.7 billion general fund. There was a lot of discussion about how big of a budget shortfall is the state experiencing this year. Over the fall, we heard 58 billion, 68 billion, particularly from the LAO. The governor believes that the state in this budget year is experiencing a $37.5 billion shortfall, with about 30 billion in deficits in the out year, so the next year or two. So really, there's an issue of which time period are we counting, right? Because when the LAO put out their $68 billion figure, it was a multi-year figure, and perhaps either they or the press didn't do as good a job as they should have in clarifying that that covered multiple fiscal years. So the governor proposed, along with his budget, a mix of what they call budget solutions, right? How are we going to address this gap in revenue, the revenue shortfall? And it's a mix of withdrawals from reserves, reductions, borrowing, delays, and deferrals deferrals, excuse me, some of which do directly affect us in the school facilities world, and I will get to those. Let me talk about the K-12 budget, TK-12 budget. So total funding for TK-12 education is 126.8 billion. And that's for all K-12 programs. And per pupil funding, according to the governor, is 17,653 if we look only at Prop 98, but 23,519 per pupil when accounting for all funding sources. So this would represent only a decrease from last year of $8 in per pupil funding, with a big asterisk, a big caveat, if the governor's proposals materialize. He has yet to explain how he's going to address an $8 billion deficit from the last fiscal year. So we are expecting additional details on that by February 1st. There are some trailer bills that are due, so stay tuned. But remember, everything that you tweak, right? If you make a change here, if the legislature rejects one of the governor's proposals here, it means that we can't meet this other commitment, things of that nature. So it's all a moving puzzle. Another really important thing that schools have been watching is the local controlled funding formula cost of living adjustment, or COLA. Previously, they had been 3%, 6%, above 6%. We had some record-breaking ones. But this time, they are proposing a 0.76% COLA, which is extremely low. And I think the only one that has ever been lower was around 2008, 2009, when we had the Great Recession. So this will obviously be very hard for school districts to deal with. Now, getting to the state school facilities program. To address the projected budget shortfall, the governor is proposing to decrease a planned expenditure in the budget year from 875 million to 375 million. That's a reduction of 500 million. So, you know, we tell you regularly, right? When we see what they call intent language in the budget, it's never binding, right? They always have the flexibility to do this if the revenues don't materialize. So this is exactly what happened here. Similarly, I'm gonna have to say this program name out loud. The Preschool Transitional Kindergarten and Full Day Kindergarten Facilities Grant Program. The governor proposed to delay once again for the second consecutive year, 550 million general fund for that program. So it was originally supposed to be allocated in the 2023-24 fiscal year. It was delayed to 24-25, and now he's proposing to delay it again. So if the legislature agrees, there would be no funding for this program in fiscal year 24-25. So now that I've depressed you all, let me share some good news. The governor was very complimentary about a state school facilities bond. He said unequivocally, I'm absolutely for it. It was the first time that he has publicly made that commitment, even though privately we've been hearing that for a while. So it was wonderful to see. And he also commented on, in response to questions from press, he commented on whether he thought CSU and UC should be included and the size of the bond. And his response was generally that he would be guided by polling, which we think is the right response. So, you know, we appreciated the governor's full-throated endorsement of the bond and look forward to engaging with him and his staff on that effort. So what's coming up next? So the first two of what will be dozens of hearings on the budget have already taken place. That was yesterday. Each House, the Assembly, and Senate held its first overview hearing of the governor's proposed budget, but then their full budget committees and their budget subcommittees will each hold about 60 or more hearings to delve in deeper, come up with their own ideas over the next few months. And we will, of course, be following that process, advocating for those school facilities dollars to the, you know, to the best ability of the state to come up with that money. And if you want to hear a deeper dive on the budget and more updates, you have a couple of opportunities. Join us, as Alan said, tomorrow at the Cash Web Shop on the budget, and also at the 45th Annual Conference on School Facilities, scheduled on February 28th through March 1st. And with that, I will pass it to Rebecca.
Thank you, Nancy. My update today is really quick since we're at the beginning of this legislative year. Just to pick up on what Nancy was talking about on the school bond, we're going to be delving into that a little bit more in the cash workshop tomorrow. So join us for a little bit more analysis on linking the bond to the budget conversation. You know, we're hearing the governor talk about a bond in relation to his budget proposal to cut school facility program funding. So there's a linkage there in his mind, right? That the pressure may be reduced on providing those general fund dollars the closer and closer that we get to a potential November 2024 bond election. So we'll unpack that a little bit tomorrow in our workshop. We are really excited to hear those strong comments of support from the governor. As a reminder, Cash is supporting AB 247, which is authored by Assemblymember Maritsuchi and two of his Assembly colleagues. So we'll talk tomorrow a little bit more about ways to engage and help support that bond process, because the closer that we do get to the legislature passing a bill to place a bond on the ballot, then those opportunities to really engage in that process will start to ramp up. So we'll talk about that as well tomorrow. As far as where we're at with this, negotiations between the governor and the legislature will need to take place in order to reconcile some of the policy differences and address different state priorities in the state school bonds. The governor in his budget did say he plans to engage in those conversations in late spring. So one of the jobs that we're going to be doing as Cash is to try and push for movement quicker than that, so that we've got a longer runway to have a successful campaign so that voters can understand how a state school bond will help their communities. So join us tomorrow for the workshop. Join us, as my colleague said, at the Cash annual conference. We'll talk about all those things in a little bit more detail. I wanted to follow up as well on one item that Brian LePask raised, which was the CCI issue and that reduction in the per pupil grant amount that's being proposed for consideration by the State Allocation Board today. You will likely see and hear Cash raising some concerns about that before the board this afternoon. You know, we don't think that that necessarily reflects the reality of what schools are seeing out in the marketplace, right? Just as a general rule of thumb, projects typically don't get cheaper year over year. So we're looking into that and doing a more detailed analysis to help inform our policymakers about that action that they're poised to take this afternoon. So stay tuned for more information on that. And then the last thing that I want to mention is good news. So I've been talking to you for the last couple of months about the design build authorization for K-12 schools. So that is a specific statutory authorization that allows us to do the traditional design build method for our school construction projects. That authorization is sunsetting in January of 2025. And so Cash is excited to announce that we are sponsoring a bill to eliminate the sunset. So that bill is now in print as of yesterday. It's SB 956 by Senator Cortese. So we're really excited to partner with him. So pleased that he's willing to take this up and show leadership on this issue. If your school district or if your client is doing traditional design build, and what I mean by that is not the new alternative design build that was authorized in 2022, which looks very similar to a progressive approach. So if you're using a traditional design build methodology, please reach out to me. We'd love to hear your story. We need to show the folks in the legislature that this is a tool that's important to school districts. Philosophically, if we've got an authorization for an option that provides another possible route to a successful school facility project, we don't want to lose that, right? So please help us make the case to our lawmakers that it's important to preserve that authority. And you'll hear more from us in the coming months on that bill as it makes its way through the legislative process. And with that, Alan, I think that's our update for today. And we're happy to dive into some of these things in more detail tomorrow in our workshop.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rebecca, Nancy, and Ian for those great updates. Really appreciate it, and really kind of highlights the work that's happening day in and day out up in Sacramento to ensure that we're moving forward with very important issues like our ability to use design build. I mean, a lot of districts are using that successfully, and to lose that would definitely be a big negative for school districts moving forward. So we appreciate that. The other thing is, the financial issues really underscore a lot of things. We knew that at some point our economy was going to turn around, and we're beginning to see that now. And it even underscores the need for all of us to work together for a bond in 2024 to keep school facilities dollars moving forward and allowing all of us to improve our schools to better serve our students. So again, another plug for tomorrow. If you haven't already signed up, shame on you. Please sign up and be there tomorrow to see that web shop on the governor's budget. So, all right, with that, we'll move on to the School Energy Coalition. I think we're going to call Nancy back for this one, I believe, and talk a little bit about School Energy Coalition.
Yes, sir. I'm back for a brief update. So let me now talk a little bit about the budget from the School Energy Coalition perspective. Ian and I talked half jokingly about, in our budget updates, doing a list of everything that was not included in the budget, which we don't typically do, but there was a lot that we looked for and didn't find. Chiefly among those issues is no help for school districts to bear the additional costs of the solar mandates, right? Talking both about the changes in the building code, but also the additional costs created by NEM 3.0 and NEMA. So we saw no interest in helping schools with those new additional costs. We did see a $500 million one-time Prop 98 general fund line item for zero emission buses. This is the program that has been really successful, operated as a partnership by the Air Resources Board and the Energy Commission, right? So one covers the bus replacement, the other covers the infrastructure and charging equipment. We love this program. It's very, very necessary, but it's going to be difficult to advocate for persuasively because, first off, the LAO immediately recommended against any new expenditures in a year where we have a significant budget shortfall, and they specifically called this line item out as one of those that the legislature should reject. And 500 million, when you're trying to close an $8 billion gap, that's meaningful, right? That's meaningful gap closure. And the LAO also phrases their recommendations this way. They say you really have to want one of these new programs more than you want the thing that you were already planning on doing with that money, right? That should be the criteria that the legislature uses. So from our perspective, it's tough to say that we need this 500 million more than we need the 500 million that would have gone to the state school facilities program. So that's just something that we will be juggling with. And you can hear more on that, as well as federal funding opportunities through the Inflation Reduction Act, and more on navigating the post-NEMA world if you join us at the SEC workshop and the SEC meeting that will be held in conjunction with the CASH conference. And that is all for me, Alan.
Great, thank you, Nancy. Important work on the energy front, which is really, really important, and impacts a lot of our school districts up and down the state. So thank you for that work. So we'll go ahead and jump into an update on our 45th annual conference. So you heard it mentioned a couple of times. It's just over a month away until we start our annual conference. So you should have already signed up for that now. Registrations are still open. If you're just not registering or you're still looking for a hotel room, they are becoming very, very scarce. We're almost completely sold out of hotel rooms. So look on the CASH website where we try to keep that updated and available to you, where we do know that there may be rooms available. So use that resource to try to help you. Another quick update, where traditionally at our annual conference, we have had a more traditional golf tournament that's associated with our annual conference. This year, we are doing something a little different at the request of changing it up a little bit and some of our sponsors and other individuals. We're going to be doing Top Golf this year. So Top Golf annual tournament will be held on Tuesday, February the 27th from 4 to 7 p.m. I do believe that there is information on our CASH website, the CASH annual conference website on the Top Golf. There's a flyer out there for you to get involved and sign up. We're trying to mix things up this year and do something a little bit different. It's going to be a fun event. So even if you're not a golfer, I highly encourage you, even if you're not a golfer, like myself, I am not a golfer, go to the event. It's going to be a fun event. There's going to be a lot of energy and excitement to really take over the Top Golf facility and have a wonderful event there. So please plan on being there Tuesday, February 27th from 4 to 7. At this point, our annual conference planning committee is working feverishly to finalize the last details and all of the presentations for a wonderful event. But we all look forward to seeing everybody there on February the 28th through March the 1st in Sacramento. So that's a quick update. Now I think we're going to take a little bit of a step back, or we're going to jump to the California Department of Education. I'm not sure, do we have our attendee here? No, I think maybe we're skipping that. Okay, so we'll move on. We'll do a little play at the line of scrimmage, as it were. So we'll talk a little bit about our job exchange. So this is a resource that's available to members, the CASH members, where we can really post job opportunities, RFPs, RFQ opportunities to try to really spread your word out there to really reach a larger audience. So we do highly encourage members to use this opportunity. Really gets a wide audience of people that sees that can look at what opportunity you have, whether that's a particular position that you're looking for, or it's you're trying to get some of our private partners to engage on some job opportunities. So take advantage of that and make sure to get your job opportunity or RFQ listed there. So we're going to jump to the next page. So reminding everyone, the next CASH day, the next CASH general membership meeting will be held Wednesday, March the 27th. We are returning to an in-person format. This will be both an in-person format as well as a live Zoom opportunity. So we're encouraging folks to come on out to Sacramento, be able to meet with some of your state legislators and your state partners. But if you're not able to do that, there'll also be a Zoom opportunity for you to engage as well. This will be something that we're trying to move beyond the COVID changes and get back to face-to-face opportunities. So March the 27th in Sacramento, more information will be coming out after the annual conference on specifically what building, what venue we'll be having that, but plan on being in Sacramento on March the 27th to return to face-to-face to meet with and engage with our state partners. So moving on to the next, I think we've kind of reached the end of our presentation. So I wanted
Alan,
to
can I make a
Sure, Tom.
Well, I want to go back to what Rebecca noted and Brian Lamouse noted. I wanted our members to maybe leave with the recognition that they, as practitioners, have substantial knowledge about many things that we do. They're the strength of this organization, and their knowledge of what's happening in the construction industry today, cost of construction, is something that they're living day to day. I know this Mike Satley's question earlier. You know, Mike is knowledgeable. He's highly skilled practitioner. Someone like Mike, if they want to communicate with the allocation board today, even remotely, I would encourage them to do that, to share their specific information. California is the most diverse state in the union, with unique circumstances of construction as well as students and school districts. So my point is, your knowledge may be something that's influential today, communicating with the board. Secondly, as Rebecca said, we will be speaking to the board today. We're filing a letter with the board really as we speak, and because this item just came up late last week, and we've been able to analyze it. We're filing a letter with the board, and we want them to really review this matter very carefully, because it doesn't really align with what districts like your district, Alan, are experiencing with costs. And without going into the history of how we got to where we are with the pupil grant amount, but it wasn't based on construction costs exactly when it was fenced, and it certainly doesn't today. So just if you you can communicate with board members, even during the board today, or as a follow-up, we would encourage you to do that. And we will come back and revisit this issue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me try to, there was some audio difficulties there, Tom. And so let me try a moment to kind of paraphrase what you were talking about. As far as cash is concerned, we're very concerned about the proposal that staff from the OPSC is going to be presenting to the state allocations board today in a reduction to the overall per pupil grants for the CCI cost change. Cash leadership, myself, we're submitting a letter to the state allocations board today, basically detailing out our objections to a reduction in cost and really citing actual experiences that are happening in the field day in and day out. All of us are experiencing cost increases across the board. I don't believe anyone out there is going to say that they're seeing costs go down. We've penned a letter to the state allocations board basically detailing that, and that we feel that the index that they're using RS means doesn't accurately project the experiences that we're having in the field. So each of you that are attending today, we do call upon you, reach out and talk to your allocations board members, your legislators. Let them know the concern you have with the state allocations board adopting a reduction in the world that we currently live in, where prices continue to accelerate and inflation continues to have a direct and material impact on the work that we do. Reach out to your state allocations board. If you can make it, be on the meeting tomorrow and state your experiences and what you're seeing in the real world, to really let the board members know what's happening in the work that we do. These board members are not practitioners. They do not have the knowledge that you have. They do not have the experiences that you have. And they need you, and we need you to actually step up and have a conversation with them to let them know that a reduction in our per pupil grants is not acceptable. So please, if you can reach out, sign up to be a speaker, just tell the board about your particular experiences so they're aware of what's happening out in the actual real world. So I believe that's.
And Alan, just to remind everyone, that meeting is today at 4 p.m.
Yes.
And there was a question that came up. Do we have a template? We'll share as best we can and as soon as we can the letter that we've sent to the board. We'll follow up depending upon what the board does today. We'll follow up with the board. The board could go forward and take this action. The board could say let's have a hiatus for a month and review it. We're not quite sure what it will do. We want to make sure, as you said, Alan, and hopefully you can hear me better.
Yes.
That as you said, we want to make sure that they are aware of this. That this is really that I mentioned a moment ago. This proposal doesn't align with the experience that all of you are feeling in the field today. Anyway, thank you again, Alan.
No problem. Thank you, Tom, for bringing that up. It's an important topic and one that's being presented to the board today. So again, thank you all for your time. Thank you for being here today and being part of this quick little update. I appreciate your time and be safe and continue to do the great work that we're all doing to help our schools be the best in the nation. So thank you all and have a great rest of your day.